Southampton are about to see the first fruits of the localism bill when they get a referendum on a controversial proposed power station in the city. Only people in 2 of the city's wards will get a vote, and it won't be binding on anyone. So is the council actually going to get any answers for the money they're spending?
The plans to bring wood by boat to Southampton docks to generate power have been controversial. Locals say the plant would be a blot on the landscape, and the process is far from sustainable. Both Conservatives and Labour on the council have opposed the idea, but in November they'll test public opinion with a referendum alongside the vote for a police commissioner.
We're trying to engage with democracy, with people, to try and make voting more real for them on issues that matter to them. And we think this is, as a first off, a good chance to prototype that.
Some say it's a NIMBY's charter. Only 2 council wards, Millbrook and Freemantle, will get a vote. The developers, Helius, say the finished power station, like this one in Scotland, could provide power for the whole of Southampton and more. And the council admit the vote isn't binding on anyone.
We're trying to engage with people in democracy, and if this as a trial works, then we would certainly want to take it further.
But you were elected campaigning against this, and now you're going back and saying, well, let's see what everybody thinks. It sounds dodgy.
Well, nobody had a chance to have their personal say on these planning applications. It's a new application, it's only just been submitted. I'm personally still not convinced, but that's not the point. It gives the people in Millbrook and Freemantle the opportunity to be convinced or otherwise.
Here with me in the studio is Steve Galton from the No Southampton Biomass Group. The public consultation ends in August. This is then going to be decided nationally as part of this infrastructure department system. It's a bit late to take this vote in November, isn't it?
I don't think it's a bit late at all. I mean, this is a long process. Even if their application's accepted, we're still talking about a 12-month process after this. So this could actually form a very strong argument for local objection to this power plant.
But only 2 wards voting on it is just going to be a NIMBY's charter.
I can see that, and some within our group actually would like to see it extended across Southampton. Obviously, we're also mindful of the cost. I know when it was initially investigated, it was only going to cost £5,000. We have found out since it could cost up to £45,000 to hold this referendum. So,
well, even though it's combined with the police commissioner vote?
I believe the latest thing is it might not allow to be run in conjunction. That is something that the council are looking into at the moment.
Right, so this is already hitting some issues. Could it muddy the water for your campaign just to stop the station being built?
Obviously, it couldn't muddy the water, but, you know, one of the other alternative suggestions we've had is the council actually setting up a fighting fund to support the residents with professional advice and legal support to actually fight this, as the whole council is unified with the residents against this proposal.
But if it were drawn across a wider area, say, I mean, that would cost more in itself. Yeah. There are some within your group, I think, who'd rather see the whole of Southampton vote on this, because it would supply electricity to the whole of Southampton.
Well, as I say, some within our group would like to see the whole of the country debate on this, because, you know, that's what we are talking about, is our energy future and our energy sustainability. And this isn't just about a local argument.
Well, you wouldn't have the whole country debate about Southampton, one station in Southampton.
No, you wouldn't. But, again, it should be something on the national agenda, though, for what are we doing with energy. And this is where, as No Southampton Biomass Group, yes, we are opposed to this plant and we are fighting it locally, but we're also saying national policy towards large-scale import-based biomass is not the way forward, in our opinion.
We'll come to some of the environmental arguments in a moment. But let's just ask our 2 guests over here. On the issue of the referendum, first of all, Antonia, do you think it's a good idea to consult people in this way, maybe at the same time as another vote?
Well, absolutely it's a good idea. I'm really pleased that the new Labour administration in Southampton have taken this step of making sure local people can have their views heard, and that feeds in to the national process of decision making. This isn't...
Well, it's just 2 wards in Southampton. As Stephen says, really the debate should be about what sort of power do we need in the country as a whole.
Absolutely it should, but what we need to remember is we've got a new planning system that hasn't been tested yet. Who knows what considerations the Secretary of State or those making the decision will want to take into account. I think it's a really good idea that we have this sort of mass participation.
It's part of the localism bill, Connor, but doesn't this highlight some of the issues around it? You've got some people saying it should be just these 2 wards, and perhaps they're going to be opposed to it because it's on their doorstep, or perhaps it should be the wider Southampton, or, well, who actually decides on whether something should be built or not?
I think you've got 2 competing things going on here. The first one is, as you rightly alluded to, what is Britain's energy policy? We are increasingly dependent upon enemies real and aspirant, Russia and the Middle East, very dangerous, very unstable places for our energy. So we've got to diversify our energy supply, renewables, tidal, wind, all of these things. And then you're seeing the conflict between the localism bill but central decision-making. I'm encountering it in Bournemouth with the proposed wind farm off the coast of Dorset, where local people are struggling to find a way of feeding into that process, and ultimately the decision is taken by the Secretary of State, but with no involvement between the local councils who are ultimately accountable to the people. So I think you're seeing those rubbing together, and this thing in Southampton is an example of that. I think a referendum that is for only 2 wards, and I know Southampton very well from my time on the council here.
So Millbrook and Freemantle.
Just 2 wards in the area that is directly affected by it. I'm not sure it's going to give a proper reading of public opinion. I think there should be a wider debate about it. And there should also be a debate about the merits or demerits of biomass itself. The fact that all the chippings that will come in by boat into the port, hence the location close to the port. There's a big question about whether this is a sustainable form of energy at all.
But we're going to have to do something, or else the lights go out. And we've got to have some sort of renewables, haven't we?
We absolutely have. I think the opportunity that's been missed with this proposal is to think about whether there was a way that local residents could have been more brought into the scheme, perhaps through having that combined heat and power mechanism that would have provided low-cost energy to 10,000 homes in the immediate area.
OK, so if some of those ideas came up, would you drop your opposition to it, Stephen? I mean, you're not against renewables per se.
We're not against renewables. We actually feel this as a country is what we should be moving. However, again, I know we're saying this is a small part of Southampton. We're talking 20,000 people in the Millbrook and Freemantle wards. We had 7,000 voted in those wards in the local elections. You know, that's a massive amount of people. I think we're talking. We're not talking about a street of 100, 200 people. Right. You know, there's 20,000 people. If they all came out and voted and gave their opinion, that's a pretty strong message, in my opinion.
OK, thank you very much for coming in and talking about it.